Sorry, Anand Vijay, sorry, continue.
It's okay. Text number 19. Tada rajastamo bhava kama lobhadayas chayaye chetaitar anavitam stitam sattve prasidati.
As soon as irrevocable loving service is established in the heart, the effects of nature's modes of passion and ignorance, such as lust, desire, and hankering, disappear from the heart. Then the devotee is established in goodness and he becomes completely happy.
Evam prasanna manaso bhagavad bhakti yogataha bhagavad tattva Vijnanam mukta sangasya jayate.
Thus established in the modes of unalloyed goodness, the man whose mind has been enlivened by contact with devotional service to the Lord gains positive scientific knowledge of the personality of Godhead in the stage of liberation from all material association.
Vidyate hridaya grantes chidyante sarva samshaya shiyante chasya karmani drishta evatmanirshvare.
Thus the knot in the heart is pierced and all misgivings are cut into pieces. The chain of fruitive action is terminated and when one sees the self as master.
Ato vekavayo nityam bhaktim paramaya muda vasudeva bhagavati kurvanti atma prasadanim.
Certainly, therefore, since time immemorial, all transcendentalists have been rendering devotional service to Lord Krishna, the personality of Godhead, with great delight, because such devotional service is enlivened to the self.
Sattvam rajastama iti prakrite gunaster yukta para purusha eka ihasya dhate stityadaye hari virinchi hareti sangnana shreyasi tatra khalu sattva tano pranasyu.
The transcendental personality of Godhead is indirectly associated with the three modes of material nature, namely passion, goodness, and ignorance. And just for the material world's creation, maintenance and destruction, he accepts the three qualities forms of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. Of these three, all human beings can derive ultimate benefit from Vishnu, the form of the quality of goodness.
Parthivadaruna dumas tasmad agnis trayimaya tamasastu rajas tasmad sattvam yad brahma darshanam.
Firewood is a transformation of earth, but smoke is better than the raw wood. And fire is still better, for by fire we can derive the benefits of superior knowledge through Vedic sacrifices. Similarly, passion, rajesh, is better than ignorance, tamas, but goodness, sattva, is best because by goodness one can come to realize the absolute truth.
Bhejire munayo thagre bhagavatam adokshajam sattvam visudam shemaya kalpante yenutanihi.
Previously, all the great sages rendered service unto the personality of Godhead due to his existence above the three modes of material nature. They worshipped him to become free from material conditions and thus derive the ultimate benefit. Whoever follows such great authorities is also eligible for liberation from the material world.
Mumukshavo gora rupan hitva bhuta patinatha Narayana Kalashanta Bhajanti Anu Suya Vaha.
Those who are serious about liberation are certainly non-envious, and they respect all. Yet they reject the horrible and ghastly forms of the demigods and worship only the all blissful forms of Lord Vishnu and his plenary portions.
Rajastama Prakriteya Samashila Bhajanti Ve Pitru Bhuta Prajasadin Shriya Sarve Prajaspasava.
Those who are in the modes of passion and ignorance worship those in the same category, namely the forefathers, other living beings, and demigods who are in charge of cosmic activities, for they are urged by a desire to be materially benefited with women, wealth, power, and progeny.
Text 28 to 29. Vasudeva Paraveda, Vasudeva Paramakha, Vasudeva Parayoga, Vasudeva Parashriya, Vasudeva Param Gnanam, Vasudeva Param Tapaha, Vasudeva Paradharmo, Vasudeva Paragatihi.
In the revealed scriptures, the ultimate object of knowledge is Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead. The purpose of performing sacrifice is to please him. Yoga is for realizing him. All fruitive activities are ultimately rewarded by him only. He is supreme knowledge, and all severe austerities are performed to know him. Religion, dharma, is rendering loving service unto him. He is the supreme goal of life.
Sa evadam Sasarjagre Bhagwan Atma Maya Yaya Sadasad Rupaya Chasho Guna Maya Guno Vibhu.
In the beginning of the material creation, the absolute personality of Godhead, Vasudev, in his transcendental position, created the energies of cause and effect by his own internal energy.
Taya Vilasiteshu Guneshu Gunavaniva Anta Pravishta Abhati Vignane Vijram Pitaha.
After creating the material substance, the Lord Vasudev expands himself and enters into it. And although he is within the material modes of nature and appears to be one of the created beings, he is always fully enlightened in his transcendental position.
Yatha hi avahito vanir daru eka swayonishu naneva bhati vishwatma bhuteshu cha tatha puman.
The Lord, as Supersoul, pervades all things, just as fire permeates wood, and he also appears to be in many varieties, though he is the absolute one without a second.
Aso guna meyir bhavir bhuta sukshmendriyatma bhihi swanirmiteshu nirvishto Bhunte bhuteshu tadgunaha.
The Supersoul enters into the bodies of the created beings who are influenced by the modes of material nature and causes them to enjoy the effects of these modes by the subtle mind.
Bhavayat yesha sattvena lokan ve loka bhavana lilavataranurato devetiraнарадishu.
Thus, the Lord of the universe maintains all planets inhabited by demigods, men, and lower animals. Assuming the roles of incarnations, he performs pastimes to reclaim those in the mode of pure goodness. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, both of you. Very, very nicely recited. Vilash Mataji, very nicely done in English. And Anand Vijay, excellent. So nicely recited in the Sanskrit. Thank you so much, both of you. I'll stop sharing this and I will now share our presentation for today. Okay, dear devotees, we are coming towards the end of the second chapter of the first canto. Today we'll be discussing verse 30. The second chapter of the first canto is entitled Divinity and Divine Service. So before we start saying anything, we'll just do the invocation prayers. Narayanam namaskrityam naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswati vyasam tato jayam mudiraya nashtaprayashu bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhakti bhavati nastiti krishne swadamupagate dharma jnanadihi saha Kalau nastadrisham esha purana kodunoditaha Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Chari Swaminiti Namine Nikta Cheta Supraneta Vagminam Chara Sakudam Tapupadagata Prana Naumi Bhakti Charupati Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Pashyata Shatari Prabhupada Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we will just recap the chapter so far. So 1 to 7, Sutta Goswami begins as a reply to the wonderful questions by the sages. And he begins, before he replies, he actually glorifies the questions. Then 8 to 15, he explains that only bhakti is to be gained by one's prescribed work. And then 16 to 22, we went through these lovely stages of bhakti. And 23 to 29, which is the current section. No, so this is until yesterday, it was only Krishna is to be worshipped. And then today's section is 30 to 33. So today is the first verse of 30, but Lord Krishna manifests. So the Goswami will explain how Lord Krishna manifests the material world by his different expansions. So we'll recite today's verse again, 1 to 30. Sa evedam sasarjagre Bhagavan Atma Mayaya Sad Asad Rupaya Chasau Gunamaya Guno Vibhu. In the beginning of the material creation, the absolute personality of Godhead Vasudev, in his transcendental position, created the energies of cause and effect by his own internal energy. Purport by Sri Prabhupada Ki Jai. It's a short purport, so somebody can just unmute and recite this, please.
Read, Prabhuji.
Okay, go ahead.
So the position of the Lord is always transcendental because the causal, and effectual energies required for the creation of the material world were also created by him. He is unaffected, therefore, by the qualities of the material modes. His existence, form, activities, and paraphernalia all existed before the material creation. He is all spiritual and has nothing to do with qualities of the material world, which are qualitatively distinct from the spiritual qualities of the Lord. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Sundari Mataji. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Prabhupada ki jai. Om Ajnanati Mirandasya Dhyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishnam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuttapadakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavasya Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadavaitam Sabatutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Salita Shri Vishakha Smitasya Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandho Jagat Pate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namo Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Shri Prabhupada ki jai. So this yesterday's two verses covered, I think, by Manu Prabhu yesterday. Beautiful verses where Vasudeva Krishna is the essence of all processes. So that was established yesterday. Very important two verses. So we'll just, before we continue, we want to recap the two verses yesterday. So Vasudeva is the essence of all processes. So the first thing that was mentioned in that verse was Vasudeva Para Veda. What does that mean? Anybody who was there yesterday in the class?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Yes, Venkat Prabhu, go on.
Dandavat pranams. Is it easy to understand like all the purpose of Veda is to know Vasudeva? Is it something like that?
Yeah, ultimate object of Vedas is Lord Krishna. That's what that verse is saying. There's 8 different segments to that verse. So there's Vasudeva Para Makha. Anybody? Makha. Makai, if you think about the word Makai.
The ultimate purpose of sacrifice.
Yes, sacrifice.
Sacrifice. Purpose of all sacrifice is to please Lord Krishna. So whatever sacrifices we do, we always remember it is ultimate aim is to please Lord Krishna or Vishnu. Vasudeva Para Yoga.
Mystic paraphernalia is in the purple.
Yeah, so more precisely, yoga is for realizing Lord Krishna. Yoga is not just for gymnastics. Ultimate aim for yoga is realizing Lord Krishna. Prabhupada often in his lectures would say, nowadays it's fashionable for all the yoga studios, but they have no connection with Krishna. So it's just gymnastics. Vasudeva Para Kriya. Kriya refers to work, or in this case specifically to fruitive results. So all fruitive results are rewarded by Lord Krishna. So many places in the Vedas, the recommendations of worshipping the demigods to attain certain boons. But in the 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna clearly says that ultimately all those rewards are given by me. Vasudeva para jnanam.
Is the supreme
Knowledge.
knowledge.
Yes, absolutely. Lord Krishna is the supreme knowledge. Vasudeva para tapa.
Austerities.
Austerity.
Exactly. All austerities are performed to know Lord Krishna. Vasudeva para dharma.
Is the religion.
Yes, real religion. Real religion is developing loving service to Lord Krishna. Savaipamsa paro dharmo yato bhaktira doshikche. That's his second chapter, second canto, first chapter, first canto, second chapter, text 6. Vasudeva paragati.
Ultimate goal.
Ultimate goal, absolutely. The supreme goal, the ultimate goal of life is Lord Krishna. So imagine if we can remember all this, literally everything that we do in life is covered in these 8 points. So if we are that way, we say International Society for Krishna Consciousness. This is what it was made by Krishna consciousness. We will be in 100% Krishna consciousness if we do all these activities, keeping Krishna in mind. So now establishing Krishna's supreme position as the ultimate for everything, so the Goswami is now going to continue answering questions given by the sages. And the question number 4 by the sages was in the first canto, first chapter, text 17, where the sages are saying, Tasya karmani udarani parigitani surivi bruhina sadadananam lilaya dadata kala. So here this question is almost like a statement, it's just a request for some information, really, rather than a question. It says the sages are saying his transcendental acts are magnificent and gracious, and great learned sages like Narada sing of them. Please, therefore, speak to us who are eager to hear about the adventures he performs in his various incarnations. So, as I was saying, it's listed here as a question number 4, but actually it's like a request for information about his incarnations. So now the sages are asking in that text. So in this particular today's text, text 30, Sutta Goswami will begin to answer, and he's going to start describing Krishna's expansions beginning from the Purusha avatars. So the purport says, in the beginning of the material, so this is not a purport, this is actually the text itself. The beginning of the material creation, the absolute personality of Godhead, Vasudeva, in his transcendental position, created the energies of cause and effect by his own internal energy. So 2 things discussed here. Created the energies of cause and effect, which basically refers to the Mahatattva. But then Mahatattva alone is no good. He has to expand himself into the Purusha avatars to then agitate the Mahatattva so that creation would begin, right? So Purusha avatars is going to start. So in these texts, 30, 31, 32, 33, like that, he will discuss the Purusha avatars. So Purusha avatars, who knows? Can you name the Purusha avatars?
Karana Vishnu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes.
Udakshay Vishnu.
Karana, that's the first one.
Shirodakshay Vishnu.
No, first is Karana. Who comes next?
Oh, Garbhodakshay Vishnu.
Garbho, yes, exactly. Garbhodakshay Vishnu, and then comes Shirodakshay Vishnu. So this is very beautifully explained in the Narada Purana, Narada Panchavatra. And here, Prabhupada quotes this particular verse and its meaning in the 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, text 4, in the purport. So if somebody wants to refer to it, because it's very difficult to find actually the Panchavatra on the net, but if you want to refer to this particular text, it's in the 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita in the purport of the text 4. So he says, Vishnu's tu trini rupani Purushakshyani atho vidu ekam tu mahata srastrir vityam va andas samsthitam Tritiyam sarva bhutastham tani gyatva vimuchyate. So this is the Purusha avatars explained so nicely here. So for material creation, Lord Krishna's plenary expansions assume three Vishnus. The first one as the Mahat Tattva, the first one, Mahavishnu, creates the total material energy known as Mahat Tattva. The second, Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, enters into all the universes to create diversities in each one of them. The third, Kshuradakshaya Vishnu, is diffused as the all-pervading supersoul in all the universes and is known as Paramatma. He is present even within the atoms. Anyone who knows these three Vishnus can be liberated from material entanglement. Tani Gatma Vimuchyate. We get liberated just by understanding this fact. Can you believe it? Just by understanding how Krishna has expanded himself. Because if you understand this, then at least you know whatever happens subsequently is because of Krishna, because Krishna is the one who expanded into these truths. So this is the perfection of this knowledge. So Purusha avatars will be further explained in the next chapter, chapter 3, right in the beginning. The first 4 or 5 texts will go into more detail about the Purusha avatars. Continuing on to the purport, Prabhupada says, the position of a Lord is always transcendental because the causal and effectual energies required for the creation of the material world were also created by him. So as we said earlier, the Mahat Tattva was created by him, and this is why he is always transcendental. And 2933. So 2933 is the first verse of the Chatushloki Bhagavatam. Any Bhakti Vaibhav students know this verse, 2933? The very first verse of the Chatushloki Bhagavatam.
Aham evasam evagre. Nanya Dyatsat.
Yes, go.
Sorry.
Very nice. Very nice, very nice. So aham evasam evagre. So it's agre. This word agre is also in today's verse. Sasruja agre. So today is in this verse is evagre. Aham evasam evagre nanya dyat sat param paschadaham yadetacha yo vasishyeta sosmyaham. So he's Lord Krishna speaking to Brahma, and he says, Brahma, it is I, the personality of Godhead, who was existing before the creation, when there was nothing but myself, nor was there the material nature, the cause of this creation. That which you see now is also I, the personality of Godhead. And after annihilation, that what remains will also be I, the personality of Godhead. So very clearly, he establishes here. And this is the first, imagine, these are the first 4 slokas. So these are the only 4 slokas that Lord Krishna spoke to Brahma. So these 4 slokas, 33 to 36, contain the entire Bhagavatam. And so everything else we read in the Bhagavatam is an expansion of these 4 slokas. So right in the beginning, Krishna is establishing his position as the origin of all. Because he's saying, aham evasam eva agre, which means right in the beginning, agre means in the beginning. In the beginning, when there was nothing there, it was only I. There was nothing else. There was not even the creation, which means the Mahat Tattva didn't exist. It was just him. So here, this proves there's nothing beyond Lord Krishna. Well before coming to Krishna consciousness, I used to listen to Qawwalis, and there was Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan. I know some of you may know him. He left this world a few years ago, but he was a very, very good Qawwali. And one of my favorite Qawwalis, some of you might know, it was Allahu, 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 Allahu. So although he's talking about Allah, but Allah, we know Allah is Krishna. He's only one. People know him for different names. So we were listening. If we can listen to that and think of Krishna, Allahu, Allahu, Allahu. And then in the middle of the refrain, he goes, Jabnata Koya, something like that. Tab may, I forget it. So shows you how long ago I forget the lines now. But there it says that there was only me. There was nothing there before this creation. So literally, it's actually talking about this particular verse, that Kavali. I was hoping to sing it, but I forgot. I thought I might remember it, but the words are gone. Shows you how long I haven't sung it or heard it. So yes, and now I will just go through a little bit of the excerpt from the purport of the text 2933 of the Chatusloki Bhagavad Gita. Says, Prabhupada says, we should note very carefully that the personality of Godhead is addressing Lord Brahma and specifying with great emphasis himself, pointing out that he, the supreme, so that it is he, the personality of Godhead, who existed before the creation. It is he only who maintains the creation, and it is he only who remains after the annihilation of creation. Brahma is also a creation. Brahma himself is creation of the Lord, so the Supreme Lord. Because there's many people actually, especially in India, who actually believe Brahma is the creator. Yes, Brahma is the creator in that sense, because the Lord gave him the responsibility for creating the world, but the Lord gave him the ingredients. So Bhakti Charu Maharaj says it's like an architect making a huge building, and then the interior decorator is given a job to sort of fill it all out. Similarly, so Brahma is given that job to sub-create. So Prabhupada continues in that purport. In the Kathopanishad, it says, Nityo Nityanam Chetnas Chetnanam Eko Bahunam Yo Vidatati Kaman. The creator I and the created I are both accepted in the Vedas as qualitatively one, because both of them are Nityas and Chetanas. So Nityas means eternal, Chetanas of course means cognizant. So because Prabhupada is going to talk about I, because impersonalists actually say everything is I, nothing, there's nothing separate. So, but he says, Prabhupada says, but the singular I is the creator I. And the created eyes are the plural number because there are many eyes like Brahma and those generated by Brahma. It is a simple truth. The father creates or begets a son, and the son also creates many other sons. And all of them may be one as human beings, but at the same time, from the father, the son, and the grandsons are all different. So very simple fact. So this idea of oneness that the impersonalists have is flawed when you look at this. So Bhagavad Gita confirms that Krishna is the origin of all demigods and sages, and that is in the 10th chapter, text 2. Anybody know this verse? Name vidu suragana prabhavam na maharshaya aham adirhi devanam maharshinam cha sarvasa. Neither the hosts of demigods nor the great sages know my origin or opulences, for in every respect I am the source of the demigods and the sages. So see, totally, in fact, in the 14th verse of the 10th chapter here, Arjuna actually says that neither the demigods nor the demons know your personality. So this is it. Nobody can understand Krishna personally. Nobody can understand Krishna totally. Just like we say in generally in the material world, people say that you can know I can say I know my father, but actually one can never know his father completely because we were not here, right? So when the father was growing up as a child and all that, he may tell us a few things, a few snippets of what he did, and we may hear some things, but totally we wouldn't know because we were not here, right? Whereas my grandmother and my grandfather could say that they know my father. So similarly, the demigods and the sages, nobody can know Krishna completely because they were created by the Lord, so they would not know him completely. Prabhupada in that purport says, because most men cannot understand Krishna in his actual situation, out of his causeless mercy, it descends to show favor for such speculators. Yet, despite the Supreme Lord's uncommon activities, these speculators, due to contamination in the material energy, still think that the impersonal Brahman is the Supreme. Only the devotees who are fully surrendered unto the Supreme Lord can understand, by the grace of the Supreme Personality, that he is Krishna. The devotees of the Lord do not bother about the impersonal Brahman conception of God. Their faith and devotion brings them to surrender immediately unto the Supreme Lord. And out of the causeless mercy of Krishna, they can understand Krishna. No one else can understand him. So even great sages agree what is even great sages agree what is Atma, what is Supreme. It is he whom we have to worship. So in the 11th chapter, the 12th, 11th chapter. Anyway, in Bhagavad Gita, it is said that it's only the devotees of the Lord who can understand Krishna, no one else. So Brahma Samhita, of course, there are many verses, beautiful verses in Brahma Samhita that confirm also the fact that Krishna is the origin of all origin, and there's nobody beyond him. And that is the very first verse of Brahma Samhita. Anybody?
ईश्वरः परमः कृष्णः सच्चिदानन्द विग्रह अनादिरादिर् गोविन्द सर्वकारण कारणम्.
Wonderful, wonderful. So Prabhavati Mataji, would you be able to just give us a translation? Doesn't have to be word by word. Okay, perfect. You can tell us what it means.
He is the origin and cause of all causes.
Exactly. He has no other origin. He is known as Govinda. And he is exactly. So Krishna, who is known as Govinda, is a supreme Godhead. He has an eternal spiritual blissful body. This is Satchidananda Vigraha. He is the origin of all. He has no other origin, and he is the prime cause of all causes. And then another verse in Brahma Samhita 533. Anybody? Starts with Anadim. Anadim. Advaitam.
Advaitam Achyutam Anad. Oh gosh.
Go on.
Put it on
the screen so you can read it now.
Adyam Purana Purusham Navayo Manancha Vedeshu Dullabham Dullabham Atma Bhakta Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami.
That's yes, thank you so much. Beautiful, very nicely done. And will you be able to give us a rough translation? Just the words, you can see Advaitam, Achyutam, these are the things, right? So anyway, let's read it. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is inaccessible to the Vedas, but obtainable by pure unalloyed devotion of the soul, who is without the Lord, who is without a second, without a second, Advaitam, who is not subject to decay, Achyutam, without the beginning, Anadim, whose form is endless, Ananta Rupam, who is the beginning, which means Adyam, and the eternal. So Purana Purusham is the eternal Purusha. Yet he is a person possessing the beauty of blooming youth. So he's the oldest person existing, and yet he's looking like a 18, 19-year-old youth. Then Prabhupada continues in the purport. He is all spiritual and has nothing to do with the qualities of the material world, which are qualitatively distinct from the spiritual qualities of the Lord. So in the 8th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, this is confirmed. Parastasmatu bhavonyo vyakto vyakta sanatana yasa sarveshu bhuteshu nasyashu na vinashyati. Yet there is another unmanifested nature which is eternal and is transcendental to this manifested and unmanifested matter. It is supreme and is never annihilated. When all the world is annihilated, that part remains as it is. So the spiritual world is eternal, and the material world is just a reflection, which is manifest sometimes and unmanifest sometimes. The purport says Krishna's superior energy is transcendental and eternal. It is beyond all the changes of material nature, which is manifest and unannihilated during the days and nights of Brahma. Krishna's superior energy is completely opposite in quality to material nature. So very, very clearly, it is explained in the Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, Brahma Samhita, that Krishna is a supreme. There is no other being superior to him. The impersonalists still choose to believe that Krishna is a product of a Brahma Jyoti. Also, that Krishna takes on a material body when he comes to material nature. Whereas we know from the Shastra that Krishna, when he comes to the spiritual material nature, he comes in his own spiritual form, Satchidananda Vigraha. He appears like a human being. And this is why men are bewildered. 9:11 Avajanti mam muda manushim tanum asita param bhava majananto mama bhuta maheshwara. Fools deride me when I descend in a human form, Krishna says, because they do not know my transcendental nature as a supreme Lord of all that be. Avajananti mam muda. So muda, so foolish people who haven't realized Krishna, they deride Krishna when he comes and performs his pastimes as a human being. They take him to be one of us, and this is the biggest mistake. So devotees, a short purport, but very clear, obviously very, very self-explanatory. I just basically pulled up different references from different shastras just to re-emphasize and reinforce the points that Prabhupada was making in the purport. Any comments, any realizations, any corrections, any additions, anybody?
Hare Krishna, Mukunda-Hari, Prabhu, please
Hare
accept
Krishna,
my
Hare
all glories to Srila Prabhupada. What I want to know, the Mahat Tattva is the one where that's the effulgence. That's the one people mistake. That's the real source of Krishna, the people who are Mayavadis. Is that correct?
No.
No.
What the Mayavadis and impersonalists are thinking about is the Brahma Jyoti, not the Mahatattva.
Okay.
Brahma Jyoti. Mahatattva actually is
Material.
explained. It's almost like a cloud in a corner, one corner of the spiritual sky, right? Spiritual sky, which is eternal, contains this little cloud in one corner. And when that cloud is, when the material nature is unmanifest, that cloud remains as it is. But when it's time for creation, the Lord glances at that cloud-like Mahatattva and agitates it. And through his glance, he impregnates that nature with living entities. And then it is agitated and creation begins.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Bali. There's a question here from Sumad. Sumad. Thank you very much for relevant information. Learned a lot from this. I thought this question is just thank you so much for your encouragement, Mataji. Yeah. Anybody else? Any questions?
Hare Krishna, Mukunda-Hari, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
So I have a question. I've been asked this question in some of the groups that and I've answered it, but I wanted to hear from a more exalted devotee like yourself.
Dear.
So firstly, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that the soul never dies. It's never. It can never be killed. It's always present. So everything in terms of the soul is always existent. There was no start, no end. It's from eternity. And here, Garbhodakshi Vishnu presumably is speaking to Brahmaji in your reference, saying in the Chatur Shloki Bhagavatam that I am the origin. Before me, there's nothing. I created everything. So how do you reconcile the fact that if the soul always exists, when does he create if they're always existent?
Okay, so Shailesh Prabhu, may I ask you to give me your answer so I can learn from you?
I'm not qualified to answer, Prabhuji, but my rather novice answer was that it is Garbhodakshi Vishnu which is speaking here to Brahmaji, and it is the material creation into which is impregnating the Jiva Atmas. The Jiva Atmas are already existing, but he is creating the material. So there's a distinction here where people get confused. And
Yes.
Krishna and the jivas in the spiritual world are eternally existent.
Absolutely. Your answer is absolutely correct. Spot on. Basically, like you say, the living entities eternally are present. Living entities are not annihilated. So when the material nature is annihilated, at the end of creation, all the living entities that remain in this material world, who haven't made it back to the spiritual world, so first of all, let's look at the of souls who have actually made it back. So souls who have made it back, they are eternally enjoying with Krishna in Golok Vrindavan, or with Vishnu, or they're serving Vishnu rather in the Vaikuntha planet. Wherever they are liberated, and they have nothing to do with the material nature anymore. So they don't come into the picture at all. They're there. But the souls that have not made it back at the end of the creation, they are taken back into the body of Vishnu. And in this case, it would be Mahavishnu, because all the universes also would be annihilated. So Mahavishnu's body they go into. And then when it's time for recreation, what is created is the material nature through the Mahatattva. The living entities are not created. The living entities are projected through the glance of Vishnu into the Mahatattva. So they can resume their positions back and start their lives again, and to continue to journey through the material nature until they again meet devotees and finally come back. Does that make sense, Prabhu?
Perfect sense, Prabhuji. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Like I said, you had already answered it. Right.
Hare Krishna Mukunda-Hari, Prabhu.
Yes,
Question. Now you mentioned that it enters into Mahavishnu's body, and then is recreated, and so whatever soul, I mean, not all the soul were doing what they're supposed to be doing. So somebody was like animal body or whatever. So when they come back, whatever pious activity or non-pious, so they take form according to what they have done in the previous life. Is that correct?
So actually, Kapalika Mataji, as far as whatever I have read, it hasn't been explained. Actually, that part hasn't been explained. It's just that they come back to continue their journey. In which form they come back, we can only presume that, because, if, for example, if it was a human being, he would come back as a human being to continue. If it was an animal, he would come back as an animal to continue. We would presume that, but to be honest, it hasn't been explained.
Okay. No, because that's whatever activity in like Bhagavad Gita, I said, if they're dying in mode of passion, they will come as a human being.
Yes.
Mode of goodness will be elevated, and mode of ignorance will go to the animal life.
Yes.
So that's the way. Is that the way it will work?
So you see that my understanding of that is during the continuation of creation. So that's the cycles that you're going through, millions of cycles, whilst creation is here. So you're going up and down like a Ferris wheel, right? That's happening during our sojourn within this material world. But at the end of life, when the soul actually goes, and then he then resides in the body of Vishnu for millions of years before he's then projected back into the material world. We can, like I said, we can only presume that they do continue from where they left off last time. Having said that, there's another angle to this equation, because you imagine that if the world is going to end at the end of the Kali Yuga, right? Whatever Chatur Yugas are finishing, cycle going, at the end of one particular Kali Yuga, it'll be finished. So imagine that when the world restarts, it doesn't start, there is no Kali Yuga, it starts with Satya Yuga. So then you see that's why it doesn't make sense that those people will be, so like I say, there's some gray area here, not clearly explained.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Yes.
Yes,
Mamta
Mataji,
Mataji?
please go.
Huh?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Madanvat Pranams, Hare
For
Krishna.
a long time
I
no
was
hear
just
Mamta
thinking, Prabhuji, I don't know, but after the end of the millennium, everything becomes shunya then, everything becomes empty. So we have to start again from the scratch, isn't it?
As far as the material world is concerned, it becomes sunya, like you say, it finishes. Again, it's very complex, this whole subject actually, because there's different kinds of annihilations. There's partial annihilation and there's total annihilation. But at a time of partial annihilation, Lord Brahma's planet. So Brahma, the Loka, something says. So up to Tapalok, is destroyed, but Tapalok and Satyalok, they remain like that. But the total annihilation, yes. So as far as the material world is concerned, you can say the Sunya, right? But the living entities can never be annihilated, as Shailesh Prabhu was just mentioning. Living entities cannot be destroyed. So if there are living entities there at the end of the time, then they will go back and they re-enter into Lord Vishnu's body to rest until the next millennium, next creation.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
Vishali Mataji, were you saying something?
Yes, Prabhu, you are right. That I heard from one of the sannyasis saying that where we live, when we leave our body and where we live, we come back in the same body to finish our karmas again, and then we gain other bodies. But that's what I had heard.
Yeah, exactly. So like I say, we can only guess. I don't think it's been, as far as I've read it, unless somebody else has read it, hasn't been completely properly sort of explained in any of the scriptures that I have read. And of course, I can't say I've read everything, so I'm open to correction here.
Prabhuji, there's a lecture by Prabhupada, I can't remember which series it is, in that he explains this quite nicely, succinctly. I'll try and find the link. What he says essentially is that the karmic reactions stay with us, regardless of whether it's partial or full annihilation, or even when the total annihilation, or when Mahavishnu breathes in again, then everything is contracted back into his body. But the check and balance of every entity remains.
Yes.
And when recreation happens, whether it's partial, full, or a new day of Brahma, or whether it's a new Brahma altogether, we come back with that check and balance. And I think there was a further clarification on one of the points you made earlier as well, where, for instance, I think somebody asked, well, what happens when you go from the end of Kali Yuga back to Satyug? Does that mean you've got a clean slate? Actually, no, because even in Satyug, there are still demons and demonic.
Yes.
So one carries the level at which you enter may have increased, but the relativeness of your account remains the same.
Yes, absolutely. So just like the living entity is eternal, but so is karma. Karma is also is eternal. Whatever karma that you've done, it will stay with you. You unless you actually take action to counterbalance it, it remains with you. So that's quite true. Thank you so much for clarification, Shailesh Prabhu. There is a question here from iPhone. It is a common belief that there is only one God known by different names, for example, Allah. Then is there a need to spread Krishna consciousness to those who worship God by other names? So very, very good question, actually. Whose question is it? iPhone. Is it Surabhi Mataji? iPhone. Okay, nice question. So yes, what's the need? First of all, what's the need of spreading Krishna consciousness? The need is this, that people do know and worship the Lord with different names, but because these other paths, for one reason or the other, they have lost the knowledge, because they have the previous people haven't maintained the scriptures as well as our forefathers have done, or for whichever reason. So the knowledge they have is partial. It's not wrong knowledge, it's partial. So the reason Prabhupada wanted to spread Krishna consciousness was, he often says this, that my aim is not to convert people from Islam to Hinduism or Christianity to Hinduism. My aim is to explain, to give the knowledge of Krishna to everybody. They may call Krishna by different names, but we have the knowledge. So if you want to know who Allah is, then come, we'll teach you, we'll show you who Allah is. And then you become a good devotee of Allah, that's fine, right? But because we have the knowledge, India has got the knowledge, fortunately, so it is the duty of all Indians to spread this knowledge. Not that it is a secular, not that it's a Hindu knowledge. No, this is actually knowledge. This is the soul, science of the soul. This science that Prabhupada is teaching us is not a Hindu science. Actually, it's a science of God. And God doesn't belong only to Hindus. The God belongs to the whole world. It's just that people haven't got the information, so it's the duty of people who have the knowledge to pass it on. This is why there's need to spread Krishna consciousness. I hope I answered the questions. And got one more question. Does the souls go into Mahavishnu at the time of partial? So at the time of partial annihilation, do the souls go back to Mahavishnu? Good question. Shailesh Prabhu, would you know about this one?
No, Prabhuji, they stay with Brahma's creation power. Partial annihilation, they say it's only when Brahmalok is destroyed, when Mahavishnu breathes back in, that the entities go back into Mahavishnu. That's the only time. Otherwise, once created, they're within the jurisdiction of Brahma to continue recreating, and the Manus, of course.
That's right. So I think they don't go back there for the partial annihilation. They remain within the material world, but they remain in some kind of limbo until the next millennium starts. Yeah. Okay. So Neela Mataji is just explaining that Seema Agarwal, Seema Mataji, welcome. I understand you're here for the first time. So welcome to the chat group. I hope you can keep listening to this every day. Hare Krishna. Thank you. Thank you. Okay.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Just one question.
Yes.
Hare Krishna. Yeah. So you just explained that at the time of partial annihilation, the souls, they don't go into Mahavishnu. They stay within the jurisdiction of Brahma.
Yes.
Yeah. So where would that be? Where would the jurisdiction be? Would it be like in Brahma Loka, Satya Loka? Where would that be?
Yeah. So Brahma Loka, Satya Loka is the same planetary systems. So Satya Loka, Brahma Loka, and Tapa Loka.
Yeah.
I remember these lokas remain. So the living entities, they remain in those lokas until everything restarts.
Okay. Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you so much. There's one more question here.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you. This is from Bharata Sarathi. Bhagavatam Avyakta mentioned here in this verse means the night of Brahma, where partial annihilation takes place, and the living entities of that particular Brahmanda of the planet of Brahmaloka, along with the big oceans, all repose in the belly of Virata Purusha. Okay, yeah, that's a good point. So there's information here that we have the Virata Purusha, the universal form. So the living entities remain with the Virat form, with the universal form at the time. Thank you so much. Yes, thank you for the information. Excellent. Okay, devotees, thank you. I think it's been a wonderful session. Even I learned a few things today as well. So good discussion at the end. Thank you all for your participation. And we will all see you tomorrow. Panchakalpatarubhyash Kripa Sindhubhya Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji.